Hey, what would you do if you got home to your wife and saw Billy Cyrus and Ben?
Oh man, I'd have an achy breaky heart, I'll tell you that.
That's good enough.
All right. And welcome back. Thank you for joining us again, everybody, at another episode of the Digital Drive-In podcast. My name is Alex. I'm joined, as always, by my dreamy co-host, Garrett.
Hi.
And he's only dreamy because of the movie we watched today.
Silencio.
And the movie we watched today, it's finally happening. It's finally here after all these years, decades of build-up and waiting, and mentioning him in every single podcast we've ever done. Pretty much. The man, the myth, the legend, David Lynch is
Gordon
here.
Cole.
It has joined us on the podcast.
Hi, fellas.
What the hell?
I like yours better.
But, Garrett, we finally decided to do a film by one of our favorite directors. And what film of his did we pick?
Mulholland Drive. You are witnessing two men talk about a film.
Get a good look, sonny. It's about to happen
again. Mine sounds like a 1930s radio announcer thing. Elliot Ness and his men are flying to the crime scene.
You could do it like a newspaper boy too.
Read all about
Extra. We live inside a dream. Read all about it.
Wild, white-haired, crazy guy makes another film.
But before this podcast gets any more derailed, Garrett, why don't you introduce the audience to what exactly the heck Mulholland Drive is?
It's a film about a star-crossed, I don't know, starry-eyed, perhaps, girl who wants to break into Hollywood and get her big break into the movies. Or is it? It's kind of a movie about perception and the seedy side of how movies get produced and how people's dreams and desires and fantasies end up, when they don't work out the way people think that they do, that their whole life kind of crumbles around them.
Mm-hmm. And of course, since it's David Lynch, it gets much deeper than that.
Oh,
and
certainly.
It is most definitely an art film. And much like all forms of art, you can interpret it in whichever way pleases you best. And I know David Lynch is very
pleasing.
Sure. But he's very insistent, I guess, on audiences drawing their own conclusions from his film. He's very notorious for not mentioning anything about his films or what they're about, and instructing his actors to do so. He insists. Anyway, Dutch. Why don't you give us... Well, I'll start with me, because it's a little less extensive. Last year, I started podcasting for the first time on the Films from the Basement podcast. And, I did it for a couple of months. I think I started in February, so almost a year ago, which is hard to believe. But, a couple months passed by, and I decided to start watching Twin Peaks, and I had no idea that Garrett even existed at this time.
Oh.
Yep. But, it had been a show that had been in my mind for a long time. I have heard a lot about it. I had heard a lot about the redo, I guess, or the third season, as I came to know what it was, of the show that was just about to start, I think, or had just started, 2018. Yeah, it had finished. And so I wanted to check it out because I heard really awesome things about it. So I started her up, and eventually Garrett and I did a podcast together, and mentioned that he's a big Lynch fan, and I just started Twin Peaks. It was kind of a funny coincidence, and eventually, finishing it, we talked a lot about it, and I went on to watch a lot more Lynch. But I've seen pretty much every Lynch film now. I'm missing, how many? Am I missing one? I'm missing Inland Empire and The Straight Story.
Yeah.
But other than that, I've seen all of his other ones now, a year later, which is pretty cool. I watched, a lot of them or all of them pretty much in the span of a year. That's basically my background with Lynch. Not very long. Like I said, only a year, but immediately, his worlds pulled me in. His ideas, his direction, his writing, and everything, his characters just sucked me right in, and I couldn't get enough, to the point where I would literally call it, like, I would buy a Blu-ray. Like, I bought Wild at Heart and Mulholland Drive last month because I had gone like a month and a half without watching a Lynch movie, and I needed another fix, in quotation marks or whatever. Like, they're like crack, really. He's just fantastic stuff. And I'm so glad that I watched Twin Peaks and that I started down this train, because he very, very quickly became one of my favorite directors in the span of a year.
Nice.
Very, very influential stuff. But I know, Garrett, you are a little more versed, I guess, in David Lynch and in Twin Peaks and in Mulholland Drive. What's your history with the man, the myth, the legend?
I can't remember if Twin Peaks was the first thing that I saw of Lynch's. It might have actually been Dune, but I can't remember that far back, like which one I actually saw first, or if I even realized it was the same guy. But I watched quite a few Twin Peaks when it originally aired back in the 90s. And it's like, for a while that was what everyone was talking about, and then it just completely like went downhill, and they kept like switching what time it was, and uh as everyone knows, it went off the air, it was canceled, and David Lynch and Mark Frost tried at least one other type of TV show, and I never actually really saw that when it was out, called On the Air.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like, I was kind of sporadic in seeing his films. It wasn't really until I got more like teenage years, like when Lost Highway kind of came out,
Right.
that then I started actually like renting his films and watching them and kind of getting caught up. And so it was really at that point, from like Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive, Inland Empire, and then the new season of Twin Peaks, that I actually saw them as they were out new.
Right.
So he's always been one of those guys that has kind of always like been there, but there's these like huge gaps of time in between him doing stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it would have been cool if I could have like saw everything like bam bam bam. But there's like that, basically that 25-year wait for the next Twin Peaks thing.
In its own way, that's kind of awesome, isn't it?
Yeah,
I
I mean,
got to
that's
watch it all, but I didn't have as
yeah,
much of an effect of seeing Twin Peaks like come back.
right.
I mean, the opening scene in the return. I think we'll do a return episode soon. Maybe. I'm interested in it.
Possibly, yeah.
But the very first shot in that entire thing really is a repeat of the second season of Laura saying, "I'll see you again in 25 years," and then 25 years they make another season. So there's a merit in waiting that long, getting to finally see it realized in its full potential. And I guess there's also a merit in the full binge as well. Like, I was able to absorb almost his entire filmography in a year, and like now I'm like a crack addicted man, and I need more.
And there's not gonna be
any. And I've even watched like a ton of his short films too. So it's tough.
Yeah, like that, and some of his like music videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that's being able to see it as it airs and have that week in between thinking and talking about what's going on. And like when the originals came out, there were like some things where people would have like newsletters and people would talk amongst themselves, but this was like the first, like, really the internet age, where it came out, people were actually able to jump on a forum like Reddit and talk about it in depth to each other. So it's like, that was cool, being able to experience it as it was happening. And like, no one would know the ending, so everyone was talking about what the potentialities could be.
And nobody really still knows the ending.
Oh, sure.
Without spoilers either.
Right.
It's just kind of a Lynchian thing to just have this, what does it all mean question.
And that's as his career has progressed, the term Lynchian actually, really means something, just like Kubrickian.
Or Spielbergian.
Mm-hmm. Indeed,
Michael
indeed.
Bayian.
Michael Bean.
He's an auteur as well. Then, of course, they made Twin Peaks, David Lynch and Mark Frost, and eventually, Lynch would go on to try to do another series many years later.
Yeah, so a lot of people might not realize that Mulholland Drive originally started as a TV pilot.
Yeah. It was meant to be a TV show in the vein of Twin Peaks, but ABC just didn't like it at all, so they didn't pick it up. But originally, it was meant to be linked to Twin Peaks. It was meant to be a spin-off series focusing around Audrey and her trip to Hollywood to be an actress, right?
Yeah, that's the rumor. I don't really remember how much Lynch has really talked about.
Right.
It could have just been like ideas that he had in his head. I mean, we don't know how much it really changed from then.
Now,
but
is it Sherilyn Fenn?
Right.
She has mentioned it too. I believe I've heard her talking to of some stuff where she was almost like pissy that she was promised a TV show or something like that.
Right. So, but again, you know how people's memories are or what they take for granted.
Right.
I mean, for people that have seen season 3 and understand Audrey's story.
Yeah.
I don't. You could definitely read things into how the character is portrayed.
Right. That's true. But eventually, like we said, Mulholland Drive was turned into Mulholland Drive. It was meant to be a TV pilot until ABC, like I said, didn't like it and had it swiftly canceled. But eventually, well, not even canceled, not produced into a series at all.
Right.
Now, David was able to salvage it by turning it into a feature. As he told some of the actresses, or the 2 lead actresses, he was able to salvage it and turn it into like an international feature film kind of thing. But
the interesting thing about that is, like, when they said no, when ABC said no, Lynch pretty much thought that it was done with.
Yeah, I believe he called Laura Herring, called her and went like, "Mulholland Drive is dead in the water."
Yeah,
basically.
And it was Studio Canal that actually was going to pick up the tab to get Lynch to turn it into a film, and I think Lynch at first was kind of hesitant,
right?
But they convinced him, and so he went back to ABC. It's like, the sets, and we want to continue the film, so the sets and all the costuming and the props and things we would like to have back. And they're like, "Oh, we already destroyed all that."
Yeah, destroyed it or put some of it back out into circulation, like the costume.
Right. So. And one of the things was Lynch kind of said, like, this is a blessing because now I have nothing tying me to anything. I can go in any direction. And he came up with an idea of what to do with the story from that point.
Right.
So, I mean, it's, I don't know. A lot of people might not realize that the original Twin Peaks pilot, there was an ending filmed in case that the series didn't get picked up and they could play it as a movie like in Europe.
Yeah, it's a shitty ending.
It is, and you could definitely tell that it's not what Lynch had in mind, but they just kind of had to put it on there. So it's just so weird that Lynch has had nothing but issues with, like, TV executives.
Right.
And it's probably why he didn't jump into anything more until finally Showtime basically gave him what he demanded.
But even they tried to fuck with it.
Yeah, I think some of that was a ploy to get the money that he wanted.
Right.
For the episodes.
Right.
And I think they used his position on social media to get that. So I'm thinking it was more of a business maneuver rather than there actually really being a threat of it not coming to pass. Maybe he learned enough from the other times. But, I mean, the good thing was they gave him complete control, and it is an artistic goldmine for things. The new series.
Yeah, that is a hell of a season of television, but we'll get to that when we do an episode on that.
Sure. It's interesting that, ABC, for whatever reason, decided they didn't want this. And now when Lynch finished it as a feature film, it is named in lists as being like the greatest movie of the decade, the greatest movie of the 21st century.
Uh-huh.
Like, after time has elapsed, people can appreciate like how fantastic a film this is, and it's just a shame that they couldn't see that.
Right. And I would agree with a lot of those statements. I would say that this is one of the greatest films ever put to film, really, or at least very least in the 21st century.
Yeah, I can't agree with that.
Yeah, I know, you just hate Lynch so much.
Then you saw the Criterion version, right?
I do. I own the Criterion version now.
Yeah, that's the best one, I think. It's
Yeah.
really good.
Is there a difference in like the film, or is it just like like the best version of?
There is. I know that Studio Canal came out with a Reach and B Blu-ray, and the colorization is a bit different. I don't remember the aspect ratio, maybe a little bit different.
Okay.
I did hear that the bit rate on the newest Region B is actually a little bit higher than the Criterion. And it's actually like a 4K transfer, even though it's
Right.
not on a 4K disc. So, like in side by side comparisons, you can tell it's just the tiniest bit better on the UK disc, but unless you are comparing them next to each other and you have like a huge screen and you're sitting really close to it, you're not really going to be. They're both fantastic transfers.
Right. Okay, that's good. Now, another interesting thing about the jump over from TV to making it into a feature is that you get some of these like awesome actors who just pop up for like little bit parts,
Right.
and they're not even in the movie. Like Robert Forster is in the movie
Right.
for like 5 seconds. He has like 2 lines. That's it, right? And
Yeah,
he goes
because
away.
he was going to slowly develop the detective in the story,
Right, but
but he was only there at the intro.
and of course the person with him as well is Brent Briscoe,
Also, right.
who of course passed away in 2017, but was also in Twin Peaks in the new season.
Yeah.
And he was also JJ in Parks and Rec.
Did you see the deleted scene on the Criterion disc?
I did not. That's the only thing I haven't watched so far. I watched
Okay.
all of the interviews
Right.
and the trailer, but I was saving the deleted scene for last
So
because I feel
it's
great.
It's those two characters.
Oh, cool! So I'll have to check that out because it's interesting to see again those big characters in small roles.
And when you watch it, think about the return while you're watching it.
Okay.
And you'll understand when you get to it.
Because these films really could exist in the same year, couldn't they not? Mulholland Drive and Twin Peaks.
I would say Mulholland Drive, Twin Peaks, and Lost Highway kind of have
really
very similar. If not in the same world, there's you have
It's Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks. It could be in the same multiverse at this point.
I mean that's the thing. It's it's main characters problems with identity, some type of a mysterious entity or some sort of controlling interest. You have pale people without eyebrows that seem to be pulling certain strings.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of similarities, or there's a lot of things that kind of come from the same conceptual basis.
Right.
But Lynch does deal a lot with archetypes, and he deals a lot with like deep-seated emotions and subconscious. So a lot of that stuff, because we're all human, is going to kind of bend over into places. I even now that I'm talking about it, I want to say that the stage area that's at the end of this film is used in The Return, but I can't remember if that's the same one.
Where like Rebecca Del Rio performs. Or
Yes.
Which stage? Yeah.
Yeah, that, and then the one with the giant.
I don't know if it's the exact same, but it definitely feels like a Roadhouse scene in a way. Very powerful song. That's which lyrics are meaning something towards the characters, and we're cutting between the song and that character, kind of thing.
Right.
Certainly inspiration towards it, and I think that's something that The Return does very well. Is it's sort of a culmination of his entire filmography. But well, perhaps then we can dive into the characters a little more, if you want.
Sure.
We can start at the top of the list, and of course, full spoilers. We'll start at the top of the list with Betty, aka Diane.
Yeah, I was gonna say which Betty.
Yeah, of course, portrayed by the incredible Naomi Watts. She is very, very good in this movie. Unbelievably good in this movie, I would say. What do you think?
Nah, I never liked her.
Every time.
Sorry. I
Every single
know.
time.
I shouldn't. I was listening to what you're saying, but I was also trying to read. Apparently, on Reddit, they're saying that Club Silencio is the also the venue for season 3, but I don't know if that's
Which
true.
venue? Which part?
The like the White Lodge area.
Oh,
like
where the fireman's part takes place?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's interesting.
I was
Anyway.
trying to see if that is actually, but there's no I mean, it's not going to matter.
Well, that'd be pretty cool. But
I mean,
anyway,
but the thing is, Eraserhead takes place on a staging area, and then obviously curtains. You know that's a big thing with the Red Room. But then there's also
there's blue curtains and blue velvet, and there's red. Curtains.
And there's like
Lost Highway.
There's like bluish green curtains where Mr. Roke is.
Yeah. Well, there's like in Lost Highway, there's Twin Peaks curtains.
Right. But it's funny, Mr. Roke, but it's spelled almost like rock, and it's the Let's Rock guy, Michael Anderson.
That's true too.
Anyway, getting ahead of myself. Yes. No.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, Naomi Watts, I always liked her. She was Tank Girl. I mean, she wasn't Tank Girl. She was like the airplane pilot in Tank Girl.
Right.
And she's always been like a cute, fun actress, but I like never realized she had the chops that she had until I saw her in this film. She's just she knocks it out of the park. And I really like her as Janie E too.
Right, yeah. Janie E, and of course in Twin Peaks 3, but yeah. She nails both of these roles, I think. She has this dual responsibility to play both Betty and Diane, and I think that she really, really nails both these characters in completely different ways.
And I think having a year off in between, like the filming of the pilot and then the pickup scenes for the film, helped have that separation between the characters.
Yeah. You know, she plays the, like you said, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed kind of. No, I shouldn't say that.
Up to you, man.
The starry-eyed actress coming into Hollywood and looking to be a star, and at the same time, you know, that is just a dream. And she plays the very broken, very depressed, and very dead Diane very well as well. You know
I'm sorry. Were you done?
That was mad. That was the end of it.
Okay. I love the way Lynch is able to show innocence and being naive and showing that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
You know, it's like some of it is the audio where it's like the dubbing is pretty good, but you can tell.
Yeah, it's ADR'd in a way that
right.
I think the opening scene in a way that makes it seem almost whimsical. Right.
It's like surrealist, whimsical. You're not really sure if you're supposed to cringe or laugh.
It's like the start of a dream.
Yeah, I mean, but it's
the start of the film.
It's Neil Breen almost. It's like where, like it doesn't seem like reality at all. And there's things that you can't even necessarily put your finger on, because if you were to like describe it to someone, oh well, there's two old people sitting in the back of the car and they're smiling at the camera and they're holding hands. You're like, oh, that sounds sweet. But it's like it's the most unnerving thing ever, the way they look. He
plays that so creepy as well.
Yes.
And it comes up 2 more times in the film that I want to talk about. I don't know if you want to talk about them now or do you want to talk about them, but the old people.
Let's talk about it while you think about it.
Okay, well, I'll start with the hilarious one, which made me like laugh totally out loud, like crazy, which is when the 2 old people like just run out of the hobo's bag or whatever.
Right.
They just sprint out and I'm laughing like crazy, but I don't know if I should be laughing at the same time.
Right.
It's kind of scary, but it's hilarious. And then, of course, towards the end, you know, there's the two where the two of them are like screaming and running at Diane,
Right.
and it's terrifying.
Right. And it's shot like a horror film.
Yeah, and it is legitimately terrifying. It's amazing. He plays really well on just the weirdness of old people, does he not?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing.
Here's
Is
another
like
thing like that too.
the old people in his films always seem ancient.
Yeah. Well, it's like the grandmother in Eraserhead.
Right. Or Senor Drool Cup
Uh-huh.
from Twin Peaks, you know?
Uh-huh. Speaking of drooling, how good is Angelo Badalamenti in this movie when he pops up very quickly?
I love him so much, and I love the interview he does on the Criterion disc.
Yeah. That's a fantastic interview, and then
because it's so unexpected.
When he popped up, I was like, "Well, that's cool." I already knew he was in the movie because of the Criterion booklet, but I was waiting for him to speak the entire time, and I'm like, "Oh, he's just going to be quiet the whole time, isn't he?" And then he asks what he wants, and he just goes, "Espresso." It's so funny, and when he spits the whole thing out and just gets all pissed off and leaves, it's hilarious. It's funny, especially when you know who he is. It's even funnier.
I mean, there's so much body language in a throwaway character.
Yeah.
Not shaking the guy's hand, like hardly being able to hear him say napkin, and the guy has to come back and go, "What was it that you said that you wanted?" And it's like they prepared for him. They knew that he was like extremely temperamental about the kind of coffee that he had and that he wanted. And they found what they thought was the best one, came highly recommended, and he couldn't even drink it. He didn't even want it in his mouth. And it's like that little section that wasn't even probably like, a couple minutes long, if that, tells you so much about that character.
Yeah. He's of the highest possible. He needs the highest possible grade and everything.
Yeah, and it's like he always gets exactly what he wants.
You do what he says,
right? And
especially when it goes to casting, right?
Yeah, and that's it's like so much is conveyed without the exposition having to be there, and without them having to overtly tell you things about the character. You can just simply observe and take in everything that's needed in that character.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of this. It's the same thing with the Hitman.
Oh fuck, man!
That scene is so hilarious.
It's so funny. Oh man, and he's in Lost too.
Okay.
Which is where I knew him from. He plays a character named Jacob, who's almost like God. And when he pops up in this, I'm like, oh, cool. But this was before Lost. But I'm like, oh, he's gonna be, I don't know. He looks like a hitman, rough and tough, and then he just starts fucking everything up. It's hilarious. Like, I had to rewind the film when he accidentally shoots through the wall. Because I had to make sure that he accidentally shot through the joke and it was meant to be funny. And it's hilarious.
Something jumped up and bit me. And it's like you keep it, you don't expect it to get more and more and more ridiculous, because the first time it happens, you're kind of like, I'm not really taking this serious, because they're kind of like laughing with each other in the conversation. It seems you kind of jump in the middle of a conversation and you really don't know what it is that they find so funny. Mm-hmm. But then as things happen, you're already kind of in the mood to not take things serious. So, I mean, it's subverting the expectations, like it's some big deal, but it's like they set up the scene to be a comedy scene, but then a guy gets shot, a woman gets shot, she gets drugged into the other room to be like shown
executed.
Yeah, really? But to be shown like, okay, there was some reason that this guy shot her and then shot himself. He's like framing the scene how he wants, and then some poor janitor sees him dragging her, and then he doesn't know what's going on, so he comes in there and he gets shot, but the vacuum cleaner is still running, so it gets shot, and then the alarm goes off because there's like a fire or something going on. And so it's like the escalation is written and is directed as a comedy, but the actual situation and the story that's going on is as dark as possible.
Right.
So it's amazing how Lynch is able to do that convincingly and ride that line to where you're not sure if you're supposed to laugh or like feel sorry for the characters.
Yeah, to a point where you do both. And I think
Right.
Twin Peaks was very much like that as well.
Exactly.
And interestingly, because when you say dark now, we transition over to the only scene I had seen from the movie, I had seen in its entirety, which was, of course, the diner scene, the very famous diner scene.
Yes.
I had seen it years ago, just as it was on like somebody's greatest scene of all time or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I had watched it, and even, not knowing what the movie was, not knowing who David Lynch was, it was this not knowing the movie, not knowing the characters, not knowing anything like that. I was like, oh man, like this is crazy. This scene is intense. The dialogue is intense. Obviously, the walk all the way to the back with the jump scare at the end is terrifying. And then I went like, man, that must be. But I guess I kind of ruined Mulholland Drive for me because that seems like it's almost like a climactic moment kind of thing, right? If this is like our main character, succumbing to his demons or something like that. No, it's in the first 15 minutes and we don't see the guy again till the end of the movie. And we didn't see him before that. And when I was watching it and the scene rolled up, I'm like, oh, here's the introduction. I guess it's in a diner because, Lynch loves his parallels or something like that. And very quickly I went, nope, this is the scene.
Yeah.
And it ended. And that's when I text you, I think, right? That I messaged you and I just saw the diner scene. It's right at the beginning. I have no idea what's happening in this movie now. I thought that I was going to have a clear line and where the movie was going. Right,
no.
because I thought I had seen a scene that was at the end of the movie, and I would be able to let I got to get to that diner scene. That's still going to happen, but no, it's thrown out right at the beginning, and it sets such a tone for things that shouldn't be frightening. Just walking to the back alley really shouldn't be frightening, but it's terrifying,
right?
And it sets, I think, this precedent and a tone for the rest of the movie. Anything mundane that happens is terrifying,
right? I hope you can't hear the alarm going off in the background.
No. Is it a fire alarm? Should you leave?
No, it's a car alarm. Okay. Stop.
Like that?
No, but it's like you said, it's a thematic setting of what type of thing Lynch wants to talk about in the film.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, even though, like you said, it's two characters we know nothing about beforehand, we really know nothing about afterwards either.
Nope. Yep.
And it's just like it sets that up to where now, like in every scene, you're like, I don't know where the scene is going to go. I don't know what's going to happen to these characters. It puts it sets everything on the table in the fact that anything could happen.
Yeah.
And even it doesn't matter if it's an important character or a main character, you might not know anything at all about them, and that can take them away from you.
Right.
And that's very powerful to put early in a film. Because then it's almost like you start to pay attention more to what's going on.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's frightening, and the rest of you're intense the entire movie, even when it's a scene that really shouldn't be. You still find that intensity, and I think that's in Lynch's sound design. I think he's always excelled in that. Small little background rumbles, like extended over 6 minutes, and you just get uneasy because of it. I mean, Eraserhead, it's constant.
Right.
The entire movie has that sort of industrial sound in the background, but I think that's very present here as well. That booming bass of something's wrong.
And that's why I like that Lynch is the one that edits everything, and Lynch is also a sound designer and a sound engineer.
Yeah.
And mixes things, and he was even notated for writing some of the music as well. And so he's keen on every avenue he has at his disposal.
He needs it to be perfect.
Right.
He needs it to be where he wants it to be. Otherwise, the whole picture doesn't come together, which I think is very interesting.
And I guess that the homeless person is actually the girl that was in The Nun.
I did not know that, but that's pretty cool. Yeah. She plays the nun, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, she has very distinct features.
Mm-hmm. No, I haven't seen The Nun.
I haven't seen it either. I just know the trailer.
Yeah, I've seen The Conjuring 2, though.
Okay.
Which she's probably in. Yeah, she's in that as well.
And it was interesting, too, the eyes, the way that she looks at the guy, like her direction. Apparently, that was her, I adore you stare. Because she was looking at Lynch that way because she really respected him as a filmmaker. And Lynch is like, yeah, that looked like that at the camera.
Right.
And she's like, you want me to look like that? And he's like, yeah.
Oh, I'm just looking at a picture of her right now as the bum, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, it's the interesting. Some of that, like, I desire you comes across, which actually makes it more terrifying. It's almost like a German expressionist thing where
Yeah,
it's like they're waiting for you. They want you there.
yeah.
You
Now,
know,
have you seen The Conjuring 2?
I haven't seen any of the Conjuring movies.
Okay, the sidebar, they're actually pretty good. I don't like a lot of modern horror, but these ones are pretty good.
Okay.
Um, just the design of the nun is fucking scary as shit. If you just look at a picture, that thing's fucking terrifying. I use that word a lot today, but you know, whether it's crushed by the shitty movie that was The Nun and it doesn't become scary anymore is a different story. But she's very good at that kind of ominous, frightening look.
I'm trying to figure out. No, that's not the same person. Okay. I was trying to figure out who it was that did the mama. The thing is, and I know this is completely silly saying on a David Lynch podcast. Uh, the supernatural stuff just doesn't do it for me.
No, it typically doesn't scare me either. Like well orchestrated and shot scenes can frighten me, but I'm not frightened by the supernatural in the slightest.
It's like I always have the yeah, but why can they do this and about their powers and everything.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but that should be a problem with David Lynch films too, because there's always stuff that's not
Yes,
you
well, there's
know
supernatural element to it.
right. Yeah, it's not rational. But
Like I
anyway,
said, it's when it's done well.
sure.
You can look past it almost. Now, quickly jump back to Betty because there's something I forgot to mention here.
Yeah,
Betty's from Deep River, Ontario,
yeah. What about that?
which is like 2 hours away from me. Not disclosing where I live, but only 2 hours away. So when I was watching that and I heard that pop up, I went, "Oh my god!" Like I've been to Deep River many times. Just driving through, that's a small ass town. There's like 4,000 people in that town. So how the hell Lynch knew about that town? Whether he just looked up small towns in Ontario and picked a name that sounded cool, or he's been here, or something like that. It was very, very interesting to have that sort of close relationship to this movie, like geographically, I suppose. But at the same time, does Lynch just love Canada? Because there's a lot of Canada in Twin Peaks too.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering if it was like a name association, whereas like Twin Peaks, you think about things being like high off the ground.
Meanwhile, Deep River is
River
like,
is low under the earth.
huh? Yeah, that's true too. So maybe he did just look up names of towns like that.
It's possible.
But like there's 4,000 people in that town, so it was really interesting to hear it pop up in the movie. And
Which is interesting because Twin Peaks was supposed to have 5,100.
yeah, not 50,000.
Right. So who knows? Maybe he was just looking for something that was a small town, had an interesting name, or he could have had a specific reason. I don't know.
Yeah, which is it's cool to see that connection. But
Yeah, yeah. It's neat when you hear something different than what's always in all the.
yeah, it's not like I'm from Chicago, wow, or whatever. It was
I
like,
just came from New York to.
or it wasn't even like I'm from Toronto or I'm from Ottawa. It was like
Right, specific, yeah.
I'm from this small ass town in between where I am and where Ottawa is, closing where I am. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. But we'll move forward, I guess, to another the other main character in the film, which is of course Rita or Camilla, which is
He likes casting Laura's.
yeah, Laura Herring's character as the sort of starts off as the wandering girl with amnesia who we find like nude in a shower,
Well, sure.
but
As you
evolves
do.
into this like almost an object of love for Betty, but
Turns out there's more to it than that.
there is more to it than that. And so what do you think about her?
Yeah, I mean, she kind of has that classic beauty.
Right.
I mean, I thought it was like appropriate that it's. I mean, there's mentions of Rita Hayworth. The place that Diane lives is on Sunset Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like all these old names. But it's like I think it plays well against Naomi Watts because Naomi Watts is very fair skinned, very light hair, a very like pointy chin, skeletal structure, and then we have Rita that has like the dark hair. I think she like has some sort of like Spanish descent, a little bit of a like darker tone, even though she's lightened up with her makeup. She has like really red lips.
Mm-hmm.
There's just